Okay, thank you all for coming. We will get started. First speaking is Sue Weisling. Sue is the chair of the Police Leaders for Community Safety. Sue served as the chief of police at University of Wisconsin-Madison. She was executive director of the International Association of Campus Law Enforcement Administrators and is founder of the National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives.
Thank you, Robin. We're very pleased to be here today to announce the launch of our new organization, Police Leaders for Community Safety, which is a 501c4, and that will bring police leadership views and voices into the national debate around critical law enforcement and public safety issues. We are going to work hard we're going to work hard to make our voices heard with Congress, the executive branch, and members of the public, as well as any candidate for federal office. Our organization was formed by prominent police leaders from around the nation that are completely fed up to act on vital measures that we know will save lives and make us all safer. We know much more needs to be done to improve and evolve the American policing profession itself. And we know that as police leaders, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that public processes and elections are safe and fair. We've all come together because we can't sit on the sideline any longer. We need a much more robust and active involvement in making police leaders in the impetus for law enforcement makers, lawmakers to act. Our board and national advisory is made up of 50 prominent law enforcement leaders, chiefs, and sheriffs, many of whom have served as presidents on other police leaders organizations, or have served as executive director of those police and sheriff organizations. We may be retired, but many of us still teach, consult, and contribute to our community safety every day. I want to talk a little bit about what makes us unique. As a 501c4 organization, we can focus all of our energy on impacting federal policy. We will also do something that most chief and sheriff organizations don't do. We will endorse candidates that are aligned with us who are seeking federal office. It's important to reiterate that our group is nonpartisan. Endorsements of federal candidates will be made on their positions and how they align with our positions, not on their party or any other political affiliation. I want to note that our organization has thus far been funded by members of our board and our national advisory board. Soon we will ask members of the public to contribute donations to our vital mission. Tax-deductible donations are not allowed to our organization as we're a 501c4. Police leaders for community safety are going to champion changes in policing, safety for our communities, and safeguarding the rule of law. Today, we've got 4 respected and experienced law enforcement leaders who are going to talk a little bit about the core pillars of our organization. But first, I'd like to ask Robin to recognize some of the National Advisory Board members who are part of our launch today. Robin?
Apologies. Okay, starting with James Baker, retired director, Vermont State Police, retired chief, Rutland, Vermont. Next up is David Cooper, retired chief, Madison, Wisconsin, founder of Wisconsin Police Executive Group. Next up is Alana Ennis, retired chief of Burlington, Vermont, Duke University, North Carolina, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, assistant vice president for public safety, University of South Florida, past president and founder, National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives. Next up, Charles Folk, retired chief, Middleton, Wisconsin, past president, Dane County Chiefs of Police Association in Wisconsin. We also have Michael Harrison, retired commissioner, Baltimore, Maryland, retired superintendent, New Orleans, Louisiana, past president, Police Executive Research Forum. Jim Johnson, retired chief, Baltimore County, Maryland. Natalie Loki, retired deputy chief, Metro Nashville, Tennessee, past president, National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives. Mark Lomax, retired major, Pennsylvania State Police, past executive director, National Tactical Officers Association. Bruce McBride, retired commissioner, State University of New York Police, New York. Cameron McClay, retired chief, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Michael Scott, retired chief, Lauderdale, Florida. Award program coordinator, Herman Goldstein's Award for Excellence in Problem-Oriented Policing. Recipients, Police Executive Research Forums, Gary P. Hayes Award for Innovation and Leadership in Policing. Robert Stewart, retired chief, Ormond Beach, Florida, past executive director, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. Scott Van Scoy, retired interim chief, Cal Poly Pomona, retired interim chief, State Humboldt University. Some of the advisory board members. Thank you for joining us today. We will now be moving on to our next speaker, who is Rick Meyer. Okay. Go ahead, Rick.
Greetings, everyone. We represent chiefs and sheriffs across our great nation who, unlike almost any other profession in America, have taken a sacred oath to protect and uphold the Constitution of the United States. As such, we support the Constitution with all its amendments, including the second. Keep in mind the Second Amendment was drafted during a time of ball and powder muskets to ensure the federal government could not interfere with militias, which we now call National Guard, and their right to carry weapons and defend us. The U.S. has a long history of regulating and even strictly limiting certain weapons that have evolved from the musket era, while ensuring that the intent of the Second Amendment lives on. You know, the brave men and women of policing run toward the sound of gunfire to protect and preserve human life. It's long past time for Congress to demonstrate a similar level of bravery and find bipartisan support to limit the extreme impacts of weapons of mass destruction. Polls have shown that most Americans, even gun owners, strongly support closing all loopholes and requiring a universal background check on anyone purchasing a firearm. The brave and patriotic thing to do is to ensure lethal weapons aren't readily accessible to unstable persons or those with ill intent. Ghost guns are those assembled with non-traceable parts, often sold on the internet. Some foreign manufacturers are even importing such weapons into the U.S. with no serial numbers. Ghost guns are increasingly used in much of the street violence we see today in America's cities. Congress needs to act now to prohibit their manufacture, sales, and possession. To coordinate both existing and future laws relating to firearms, the Federal Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, or ATF agency, needs the full support of Congress, particularly fiscal support. ATF requires additional funding and support to best monitor and enforce the issues we're discussing. A national strategy to implement and actively pursue extreme risk protection orders, or ERPO, that's a mouthful, to also known as red flag laws, a little easier, will move our nation closer to keeping lethal weapons out of the hands of unstable persons. Now, some states that have adopted such laws are seeing a dramatic increase in our ERPOs that keep guns away from persons adjudicated as high risk. Other states show less activity. That's why we need a federal law that is consistently applied and that will save many lives. Thanks for listening. Robin, back to you.
Thank you. And that was Rick Myers, Vice Chair of Police Leaders for Community Safety. He was the Chief of Colorado Springs, Colorado, Appleton, Wisconsin, Plymouth, Michigan, Atlas Township, Michigan, Leal, Illinois, Newport News, Virginia, and former interim Chief of Commerce, City, and Sanford, Florida. Rick was Executive Director of the Major Cities Chief Association, President and Chair of the Commission for the Accreditation of Law Enforcement Agencies, and board member of the Police Executive Research Forum. Rick also served as President of the Wisconsin Chiefs Police Association. Now we'll hear from Dan Oates. Dan Oates was the Chief of Police in Aurora, Colorado during the time of the horrific movie theater shooting. He also served as Chief of Miami Beach, Florida, Ann Arbor, Michigan, and as Chief of the NYPD Intelligence Division.
Thank you, Robin. And I too am very proud to be joining this group today. I served as the police chief in Aurora, Colorado in July of 2012, when a gunman went into a packed theater and shot 70 people with a high-capacity assault rifle and killed 12. In 2012, mass shootings of that kind were extremely rare events. Today, they seem to happen once a week. For everyone in Aurora, including me and all my officers, obviously the victim families, but the entire city of Aurora, that was a life-altering event, and it stays with us every day. I saw firsthand how a military-style rifle, which is designed and built to kill people, can cause incredible carnage, especially when it's attached to a high-capacity magazine. Compared to a handgun, an assault rifle unleashes 10 times the destructive energy into the human body. The challenge for Congress is that it has failed to act on common sense regulations to control these weapons. Now, our organization strongly supports the Constitution and all its amendments. We also know that there are precedents and lawful means to ensure reasonable regulations and restrictions on military assault rifles. These rifles are not of any particular value to hunters and sportsmen. There are many who enjoy firearms as a hobby for competition, which we recognize, and to provide home security. But no one needs the ability to fire quickly off 20 to 30 rounds from a military assault rifle in American society. And this is what we've seen again and again that mass killers do. So as a group, we're asking that Congress finally show the courage to protect our nation and our officers from the violence that comes from military-style assault weapons.
Thank you, Dan. Next, we will hear from Cynthia Harriet. Cynthia Harriet is a board member for Police Leaders for Community Safety. She's a retired chief of Rochester, New York, and previously was a board member of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives.
Thank you, Robin. Hello, everyone. I still remember being a fairly new officer testifying at a court hearing. And I recall the judge's comments and how the serious responsibility that came with wearing the uniform just hit me suddenly. Improving and evolving the policing profession is one of the critical areas of focus for police leaders for community safety. We simply must ensure that police agencies are professionally managed and have the ability to discipline and remove officers and executives that betray the public trust. We support use of a national registry for police that have been discharged from their departments for egregious conduct. And we need federal funding to support law enforcement leaders' participation in nationally recognized leadership training and development programs. And we support measures encouraging law enforcement agencies' accreditation by a credentialing body meeting the Department of Justice's national standards. And further, improving hiring and training standards for policing is an important part of improving the profession and a way to best serve the communities police are sworn to protect. Resources such as scholarships and service-driven loans could go a long way in attracting and diversifying recruitment. As police leaders, we understand that improving the profession is vital for creating professional, accountable policing and for upholding the principles of justice and fairness as we advance public safety. Again, I'm very happy to be here, and thank you, Rob.
Thank you. And we'll hear from one more speaker, and then we move on to the Q&A. Our last speaker is Dave Mahoney. He's a board member of Police Leaders for Community Safety. He also served as the president of the National Sheriffs Association and was executive member of the Major County Sheriffs of America.
Thank you, Robin. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Police leaders in our nonpartisan group have spent their lives committed to protecting the public and upholding the rule of law, which is the foundational pillar of our democracy. We expect no less of a commitment from our elected leaders and those who seek office. Since its inception 247 years ago, our nation has depended upon laws and traditions that have ensured the fair and free elections, followed by an orderly and peaceful transition of power. That is what has made America the great country that it is. Police leaders will promote policies ensuring our electoral processes remain secure and that all citizens can equally and safely participate in our democracy. Government must protect the rights of voters to freely and safely cast their votes without interference or intimidation. Election officials and volunteers must also be protected from threats or intimidation. It is disgraceful that we even have to have this conversation about protecting the right to vote or protecting election workers from harassment or danger. But that's simply where we are now. This threat is so severe that foreign policy experts surveyed by the Council of Foreign Relations, experts who normally worry about threats in other nations, cited the possibility of domestic terrorism and political violence around the 2024 election here in the US. And they identified it as their #1 concern. On January 6th, rioters who wrongly believed the election was stolen stormed the US Capitol, viciously attacked police officers, targeted the vice president, the speaker, and threatened lawmakers, staff, journalists, and everyone in the building that day. Although it was Capitol and neighboring police officers who saved lives that day, but they also saved our democracy. Our nation owes them a huge debt of gratitude, and we honor them today. This kind of attack against our democracy can never happen again. We are speaking out today, and our new group will work hard to ensure that our nation continues to be a nation of laws, and that our democratic processes and our democracy itself are protected. Thank you. And back to you, Robin.
Thank you, Dave. Now we will move on to the Q&A. If you have any questions for our speakers, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Please also include your outlets. We did get a couple questions in advance, so we will start with those. The first question is, You are all saying that assault weapons and ammunition magazines need to be regulated. Can you say a little more on your position on ammunition magazines?
Thanks, Robin, for that. I think the best person to answer that would be Dan.
Okay, thanks, Sue. If anyone who has tracked what happened in Aurora, Colorado in 2012, the gunman went into a packed theater with 350 people carrying an assault rifle with a 100-round magazine. He fired 65 rounds into that crowd, shot 70 people, and killed 12. He stopped shooting when the magazine jammed after 65 rounds, and he was unable to complete a magazine transfer. Imagine if that magazine had held only 15 rounds, how many lives would have been saved? Again, our position is for sporting purposes, for hunting, no one needs an assault rifle with a 100-round magazine or even a 30-round magazine. It would be a sensible move in the right direction in this country if we limited those magazines to, say, 15 rounds. That wouldn't prevent people from enjoying those weapons for sporting purposes. But in our case, it's a classic example of how it would have saved lives had the magazine been smaller.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question we received in advance, and then we'll move on to the questions that are being put in the chat. Can you say a little bit more about the police leaders involved in this effort?
I'll take that one. Thanks, Robin. The police leaders involved in this effort have often led large agencies and/or have been presidents of law enforcement associations, from the National Sheriff's Association, the Major City Chiefs Association. We've tried to select people who have been leaders of police, as well as obviously leaders of police agencies or sheriff's departments. We try to boast our membership from coast to coast, trying to involve all 50 states in our efforts, as well as obviously the US territories. So we've got ourselves a group of very prominent, very successful leaders who have often spoken out on these issues and feel very strongly about these issues. Thanks for the question, Robin.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our submitted questions. The first one is from Mary Ellen McIntyre with roll call. Can you explain what sort of support your endorsed candidates will receive? When do you expect to roll out your first endorsements?
I'm going to ask Dave Mahoney to answer this one. Dave?
Thank you, Sue. That's a great question. And our police leaders have a committee working on candidate assessment and endorsement practices. And we hope to very shortly roll that out with the help of that committee.
Okay. Our next question is from Christabel Rise at the Orlando Sentinel. Is there a particular state you look to as a model for federal legislation, or even one that's closest to what you'd like lawmakers to consider?
I'm going to ask Rick Myers to take that question. Rick?
Thanks, Sue. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago in Florida and heard a Florida sheriff comment about how effective the red flags law is in that state. So when it comes to ERPOs or EPROs, I think there are many examples out there, but we're talking about other legislation as well. Gun legislation to fund increased training for police leaders. Some of it may have state counterparts, but some of it is strictly a federal issue and no states are going to have. So we plan on having robust discussions within the board, and once Congress demonstrates they're willing to work together to address these issues, we hope to really inform them and guide public policy discussions on these important topics.
The next question is from New Sports Action 2 News, and it's directed towards Rick Myers. How do you envision the role of police leaders in shaping policy and public discourse on safety issues?
Well, it kind of fits into the last question. We as a board and with the input of our advisors are eager to get to work on the Hill with members of Congress. The problem has been we're in such a divided nation right now that people aren't communicating with each other. And it's critical. The first step has to be to bring together people on all sides of these critical issues and have a civil and productive dialogue on where's the middle ground and how do we get there to increase public safety. If police leaders need to be the spark plug for that, we stand ready to do that.
Fantastic. And as a reminder, if you have any additional questions, please put them in the Q&A function. The next question is from Abigail Sukup, Colorado Springs Gazette. How are you considering implementing your strategies in the upcoming presidential election?
Thanks. Another excellent question. I think I'm going to toss that one over to Dave Mahoney. Dave?
Thanks, Sue. Well, that's a great question from Abigail, and I want to thank you for presenting that. Police leaders will be working with our members of Congress and for those who are candidates for office at all levels within the federal realm. And we will be working with them on the issues that we have brought forth in hopes that we can have civil conversations to begin with and build a strategy to implement public safety for our nation's citizens. That's clearly what our priorities are. And we're confident that by bringing these conversations forward, by calling out those who are unwilling to have a civil conversation and working with those who want to move these issues forward. Thanks.
And I think it's important for us to reiterate that we are a nonpartisan group. We are open and want to work with any member, independent, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever, groups in order to further public safety. So our efforts are going to be nonpartisan, and we're going to be looking for common ground, common sense solutions to make this country safer overall for everyone, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of what state they live in. Robin, are there any other questions?
Jumping in for Robin here, who, internet problems, we're all used to it with Zoom. It looks like she's rejoining, but that was the last of our questions, unless anyone else would like to submit last minute.
All right. Well, then thank you to everybody who participated today. We appreciate your time, your interest, and we will be looking forward to communicating more with you directly as we move our agenda forward for Safer America, for an increase in and improvements in our policing profession, and safeguarding our elections and public processes as we go into the important 2024 elections. Thank you all very much for joining. We appreciate your time. Robin, back to you if you're on. If not, Faith, take it away.
Yes, I'm back on. Apologies. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to Anna Cobian, ana.cobian@wordcirclestrategies.com. Have a great day. Thank you for joining.
Recording